Hello, everybody, and welcome to what's a very exciting day for all of us. Today is the day that we're launching the SEEDS programme, and that's Sustainability, Exploration and Environmental Data Science. What that's all about, you'll hear about over the next hour. I'm joined by a fantastic panel of people who are going to talk about what it means to them. What it means to me in a nutshell is bringing together the best of the academic world, we're delighted to have the UN support us, and CGI from an industry perspective want to lean in and help in any way we can to try and solve some of the biggest problems that we're seeing on the planet today. So without further ado, let's introduce our panel. And I'm going to kick off by saying how pleased I am that Matti, our Chief Sustainability Officer for the UK, CGI, is with us. So Matti, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Matti Yetta, and Chief Sustainability Officer for CGI, 2 months into the role. I also consider myself an academic, so I'm a researcher at heart, and I also do several tutoring to support universities. Nice to be here and looking forward to the discussion.
Fabulous. Thanks, Matti. Dr. Locke, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Dr. Russell Locke, and I'm a reader in information modelling at Loughborough University. I've spent the last 20 years or so working on large-scale interdisciplinary socio-technical software engineering projects, working with industry and other universities to bring together teams to solve large-scale problems.
Excellent, thank you for that. How about yourself, Professor Anjum? Can you just give us a couple of words?
Yeah, so Ashik Anjum, I'm Professor of Distributed Systems at University of Leicester. I'm also Director of Enterprise and Impact for my school, that's School of Computing and Mathematical Sciences. My areas of research are large-scale distributed systems and how can we use the systems for more or less real-time AI or edge-enhanced AI. So how can we quickly process data and use HPC and other systems for efficient discoveries.
Fabulous, thanks for that. Dr. Radu, a couple of words from yourself?
Hello, and good morning, good evening, and good afternoon to everybody, because I know that we have a global audience, I think, right? Yep. So my name is Alex Radu. I'm a chemist from Kiel University, and my area of study are development of chemical sensors for and with the application in sustainable use of fertilizers. So in other words, can we use less of fertilizers but use them more efficiently? And chemical sensors, in my biased opinion, are actually quite important for that.
Excellent, that sounds very interesting. Thank you for that. And then Professor Farnode, if you could give us a couple of words on yourself as well, that'd be fabulous.
Well, good morning. Thank you very much, Tara. Good morning, everybody. So I'm Sébastien Farnode, Professor in Bioinnovation at Coventry University. The work we're doing is partly based in microbiology and biochemistry combined all together, and try how to, by combining biology and technology, we can get methods which are much more sustainable into all issues. In fact, we combine whether it's medical, biomedical, technological, engineering, try to see how sustainability can be at the core of all the methods we use nowadays.
Fabulous, thanks for that. And we'll hear lots more from all our speakers shortly, but I'll just take the opportunity to introduce our keynote speaker, and then I'll hand over to Miguel. So welcome Miguel Naranjo, who is a program officer with the United Nations Climate Change Secretariat so he's over in Bonn, Germany this morning. Worked as a process engineer and environmental supervisor for a transnational corporation, and then later joined the United Nations Environmental Programme in its climate change lead. Miguel joined the UN Climate Change Secretariat in 2011, where he's focused in capacity building for mitigation and carbon market mechanism promotion of climate change action among the private sector and other stakeholders, and development of tools to implement climate action. So very well qualified to give us his views. So over to you, Miguel.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you for the invitation to join you today. I have known Matti from her previous responsibilities, so it's always a pleasure to be involved in these very innovative and collaborative initiatives that she has. So congratulations also to you for this. So I have been asked to speak a little bit about why the work on climate change, the UNFCCC, and the work that you're starting with SEEDS is important. So maybe let me tell you first, you know, the UNFCCC Secretariat, for which I work, is the focal point of the collaboration between national governments to address the climate change issue. So the bread and butter of the Secretariat is working with national governments to reach agreements, most importantly the Paris Agreement, and to implement those agreements. However, we also have another area of work which is engaging with everybody else. We call them non-party stakeholders, and basically means non-state actors, everyone who is not a national government. So we also try to collaborate with private sector, academia, NGOs, civil society in general, to help implement also action on climate to reach the goals of the Paris Agreement. And this is the reason why we have the opportunity to be together with you today. Now, why do we do this? Well, obviously, because no one can solve the climate challenge on their own. All national governments cannot solve the climate problem on their own. We need everybody in society on board, aligned with the goals of the Paris Agreement and all the sustainable development goals, of course, which are all interconnected. So we need the private sector who has mainly the financial resources to align them with the SDGs. We need the academia to help us with the research, with the awareness raising. We need civil society demanding the action. So it is necessary that everybody aligns with the goals of the Paris Agreement and the SDGs more broadly. So partnerships like this are key to achieving the goals that we all have as a global society. And remember, the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement is not something that the United Nations decided somewhere in New York or in Paris. These represent agreements that have been reached by representatives of all nations on the planet. So it's common goals. It's not the UN saying what must happen, it's society saying what it wants to happen. And for that to be possible, again, only through partnership. Now, how do we practically work with all of these stakeholders to try to achieve these goals? So we have many different streams of work. One of them is called the Marrakesh Partnership. You might want to look it up in the internet, but the Marrakesh Partnership works with broad sectors of society to try to identify pathways to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement and the breakthroughs that need to happen to be able to go through those pathways. And when I say sectors, they involve very broad areas of work, including, for example, transportation, energy generation, oceans, the built environment. So they bring together many stakeholders across the world and across sectors to try to find solutions that can be implemented only in a collaborative manner. Then we have other collaborations that are more specific, more concrete. For example, with some sectors like fashion, sports, events, where we try to help specific industries to also move forward in implementing climate action, looking specifically at their concrete circumstances, right? Their specific circumstances. And then finally, we have some other areas of work that are more generic, where any kind of stakeholder can participate if they wish. For example, the Climate Neutral Now initiative or the Action for Climate Empowerment initiatives, which are about promoting practical action, in the case of Climate Neutral Now, by any stakeholder to address their carbon footprint. And in the case of Action for Climate Empowerment, it's about education, youth engagement, awareness raising among the general public. So we try to, with the limited resources we have, cover as much ground as we can, from specific collaborations to find specific solutions with some industries to very broad issues like education in general, youth engagement in general. So in terms of SEEDS, we really want to encourage you to work forward in this collaboration. The contributions that you make through this work are taken up at some point by decision makers, right? Either in the private sector or in the political process. The contributions from the scientific community and from academia in general are always food for thought and inputs to make decisions, sometimes not as fast as we would like it, but they have an influence. They help shape the agenda for global climate action and for sustainability. So we really want to encourage CGI and all of your partners to go forward with seeds. And in that sense, we will also be around to support the collaboration as much as possible. And with that, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miguel. That was amazing. And I'm also conscious that everybody on the call will have quite a few questions for you. And as we have you for a very short time, I'll probably kick off with the first question, which is COP and all things Conference of the Parties. I suppose maybe quite a few questions in this, Miguel. The first being with COP27, which is in just a few months. Do you see this sort of work and activity in terms of partnerships between business, academia, seeds as a big theme of COP this year? But also perhaps maybe taking a bit of your reflection off the back of COP26 and just anything you can share with us in that space.
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you for reminding me. COP27 is just in a few months. It feels like COP26 is just over, and we have the next one on top of us. Anyway, yes, definitely these kind of collaborations are part of the COP, either explicitly or implicitly. I would say implicitly, it's a huge part of it, because if you look at the climate change process, it's the IPCC, for example, right? A group of scientists and academia members that set the basis, the scientific basis for action on climate. And this is then taken over by the policymakers, and from there by everybody else also in society. So there is always a very close, very important link between all of these different stakeholders to help us advance action on climate, and in a credible manner, and to keep us pushing for more urgency in the action, right? The IPCC and members of academia are some of the first ones reminding us we are not getting there, things are not getting better, and pushing us and pushing decision makers to do more. So this collaboration is there all the time, and it's very important. Now, explicitly, in terms of do we have some side events or some negotiation streams that deal explicitly with this collaboration, the answer is also yes. So on the one hand, the Climate Change Convention has observers from the academia. One of our constituencies, so one of the groups that is able to attend the meetings and in some cases also speak at those meetings, includes academia. So they are given a space to bring their voice, their views. And there is also a stream of work on research. And under the convention, research and scientific observation is one of the elements under SABSTA, if I'm not mistaken, the subsidiary body for scientific and technical advice. So yes, it is also explicitly included as part of the UNFCCC process, definitely.
Miguel, thank you very much. I think I speak for everybody on the call that we're very much looking forward to progressing our research and also progressing any and all of our activities with the UNFCCC. And we look forward to working with you and our partnership through SEEDS. Thank you very much. Tara, maybe this is a bit of a good lead into you. What is your ambition for SEEDS, and where do you see us progressing with SEEDS?
Yeah, thanks, Matty. I think when I think of all the people involved in SEEDS from an academic point of view, how does a corporation like CGI help? I'm kind of hoping we can bring some of our ability to turn ideas into kind of productized things that we can put out to the market. I think I'm hoping that those skills that we bring day in, day out for what we do, if we can lean in with our colleagues on the phone here and think about, okay, that's a good idea, but what can we do to productionize that a little bit and take it to the market? Who do we know that would be interested in getting involved from the wider sectors? Because obviously, as an IT firm, we do IT for everybody in every sector. So we actually know lots and lots of companies. And if we see good ideas that you need somebody from the banking sector, the manufacturing sector, the energy sector, etc., chances are we do some IT for them already. So I'm hoping that we'll be the glue and we'll be able to help make it go to market quicker, find people that want to, like-minded organizations that want to lean in and give a hand, and maybe think about how we help with funding as well. So personally, I'm very, very passionate about making sure that CGI does the right thing. We're on our own journey for 2026, as you know, with science-based targets to get to net zero, etc. But I don't think that's enough. I think that feels like table stakes to me now. So we do that because that's the right thing to do. We do this because we can, and it should help. And it's new for us, so we're hoping that we can find our way together on it. But it feels the right time to do this. So that's certainly why myself and the wider CGI, yourself, everybody are involved from our side.
That's brilliant, Tara. And also some activities within SEEDS will focus on sort of space and defense and satellite and data science and Earth and observation. Do you want to just share a little bit more about what we do in this space and how we're hoping to support SEEDS with our capabilities there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, CGI has a long, proud history of being involved in the space sectors for the last 40 odd years, actually. So we have lots of excellent people. We do have rocket scientists. That old expression, you don't have to be a rocket scientist. We have quite a lot of them working for us. And we enjoy doing work specifically with space data these days. So a lot of work using digital twins and mapping data in order to try and solve problems like where floods are. And most recently, and we're delighted we won an award for it last night, we're working with Project Seagrass to try and help those guys map where the fields of seagrass are around the coast of the UK, using space data to save them a lot of effort and energy going out in boats to try and navigate where the seagrass is physically. We're using the data and what we have in our kit bag to try and help them. So I'm thinking we've got a lot of tools, IP and products and stuff that we can put on the table, and maybe we can all look to repurpose them slightly and see if there's ways in which our space knowledge, leaning in with all the excellent space knowledge on the colleagues on the call here, can be brought together to see if we can reuse some stuff as well as reinvent some stuff. So yeah, very, very excited about it. I think maybe we could perhaps bring Professor Anjan back into the conversation now, and maybe you could have a think about how you're looking to map areas for potential research yourself. So any thoughts?
Yeah, so thanks for this very good question. So we have been closely working with the SEEDS program and have identified 3 areas where we would be contributing. To start with, Leicester has a world-leading expertise in space science. So Leicester Space Park is more or less £100 million investment from the university and wider industrial partners, and they have wealth of data, satellite data, that basically they have been using, for example, to identify basically burned area and vegetation recovery, mapping of the devastating Australian forest fires in 19 and 20. My colleague, Professor Kevin Tansey, has been working on that. For example, similarly, fire risk assessment for the insurance sector using satellite data. So this was another project that he has been leading as well. We have been working on a similar kind of areas for crop modeling, for floods and droughts, for example, in African regions. We are working with a company known as Savi. We are using satellite data for food security, for example. So here we have been using mostly satellite data and AI and data science models to basically identify the health of the crops, early warning basically for the crop health and how the crop would behave, or the production or the quality of the yield estimates, and what would be the impacts of droughts or environmental change on the crop quality or productivity, or on farmers kind of gains actually. So this is one area where we would be contributing, and there is a huge kind of activity going on, both upstreams where Leicester is sending kind of instrument to space. They would be collecting more and more data. They are also having a large downstream activity. They have an Earth Observation Center as well. So we are setting up a sovereign data a kind of cloud. So UK Cloud is a company that would be involved to basically help us in that. So especially on crop modeling, floods, droughts, fires, and all aspects of satellite data that could help us to basically support the climate change agenda within seeds program. That's one of the priority areas that we have identified within seeds actually. The second area that we have been working and we have identified in collaboration with seeds, and we would be closely working with them, is energy efficiency. We know that data centers are energy hungry kind of devices or centers or machines. So right now they're consuming more or less 20% of the worldwide energy actually, and this is going to go up actually. So within UK alone, for example, BT is consuming just 1% of the total energy actually. So how can we cut down energy and cut down their impact on climate change? And that's one of the area that we have identified. So for example, this has massive cost and scalability issues, and that's creating to some extent a digital divide where only rich organizations and rich countries could afford data centers. And then obviously we are ignoring the rest of the world. So in this case, we have been working on digital twins for energy modeling, where we are using AI and data science on the edge. What we say is edge analytics. The idea is that we should be creating more smaller, self-sustained micro data centers that are deployed within the communities. So instead of bringing all the data back to the data centers and then storing or processing petabytes and exabytes of data, we should process the data where that's being produced actually. So in this way, we would be capturing data more efficiently. We would be processing data within minimal time and with less energy. And then we would be enhancing the capacity of the data centers, leading to energy efficiencies, lower cost, and wide-scale deployment of those kind of new tools and technologies to the communities that are the source of the data production actually. So this way, we would be sustaining or making the whole data center industry sustainable, cutting down the emissions, cutting down the energy costs, and at the same time speeding up the applications and leading to newer kind of applications that were not possible within the existing kind of data center model. So that's the number 2 application that we have identified in collaboration with seeds programs and CGI. The third and most important activity we have been working, and we would be enhancing in collaboration with the seeds program, is a supply chain. So now we know that a lot of foods and other products are being produced in third world countries and developing countries. Either it could be South Asia, either it could be Africa or other parts of the world. Now we don't know whether the products that are being produced is they're employing child labor, or they're having exploitations, or middlemen are basically a kind of exploiting the producers, or their prison staff is manufacturing those kind of products, or there is enforced labors or any other unethical practices that are being kind of employed to produce those products. So how can we basically make sure that the products that is being sold in the developed world on their shelves is ethically sourced, it's ethically produced, their proper quality assurance? In this case, we want to make sure that we kind of used AI data science and kind of what we say the blockchains. So we intelligently use the combination of theory to make sure that we the products that are being sourced comply with the regulations. They are basically traced we say it's farm to fork, so that we involve basically write a kind of certifications and quality assurance and ethical practices and all kind of governance and compliance procedures, so that each and every step in the supply chain is properly complied with the laws and regulations, and so that we could say that no basically unethical or kind of child labor or a similar kind of practices being followed. So so in a nutshell, so these would be three important areas we will be contributing to seeds programs, and it's and in all these three areas, University of Leicester and especially Leicester Space Park has a world-class expertise that we will be bringing into the seeds program.
Fabulous, and we're really proud to have a little corner of the Leicester Space Park that we call our own. So yes, hoping to run into you.
And that's really exciting. Data science, I think you've spoken about energy efficiency, you've covered on sort of supply chain transparency, and almost beginning to give a flavor of some of the areas that SEEDS is going to explore. Dr. Locke, I suppose coming to you, very often or sometimes it's very easy for colleagues to think that academia and institutions do work in silos, but I'd like to explore the topic of sort of interdisciplinary sort of research and activities, and your thoughts and perspective on how important this is, and where you could provide any examples if there are.
Thank you. So in terms of interdisciplinary work, if you think about the challenges that we're considering, even on this call, they're very large scale, they're very complex. From reducing waste to working out how to feed the world more efficiently to trying to fix our ecosystem. None of those issues can be attempted in terms of solutions from a single perspective. Now, I don't mean research can be done in universities or it can be done in industry. We should work together. Yes, of course we should. But I also mean in terms of discipline, we need skill sets from a wide range of areas in order to leverage skills to solve those problems. So to give an example on that one, recently we concluded a piece of work funded by the Natural Environment Research Council, which was working with the Indonesian government to put flood management or flood analysis tools in the hands of their insurance industry. The problem they were facing was that the changing climate situation in Indonesia and the limited funding meant they didn't really understand how to determine how likely a given property, be it commercial or residential, was to actually flood, or for how long that was likely to occur, or on what timescale, 1 in 100 years, 1 in 1,000 years. And they'd been caught out a number of times to the point that their insurance industry was basically on its knees. They needed assistance. In order to actually solve that problem, we needed an international team working both on the ground in Indonesia with a small army of people wandering around taking measurements, as well as a team of academics in the UK working with the Indonesian government, with skill sets ranging from computer science through to management, through to mathematics, through to environmental science. Individually, our individual disciplines couldn't have made an impact on that problem area, but working together, we could. I think it's probably worth very, very simply mentioning a small issue with terminology that we face. The terms multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary. I describe myself as an interdisciplinary researcher. You also come across people who describe themselves as multidisciplinary. Multidisciplinary means you're a master of multiple disciplines. Maybe you're a mathematician and also a management specialist. To train people in that way is incredibly expensive and very time consuming. That leaves us with interdisciplinary research, which means bringing people from different disciplines together and trying to coordinate their work, despite the fact that they often lack a common terminology. They use different processes and approaches to solving problems. There's a lot of challenges there in trying to build a cohesive team that can work together, especially if they're working in an international context. Now, universities are used to working with other universities in the UK, but the moment you introduce international partners, either industrial, governmental, or research-based, the challenges become considerably more interesting for us to solve. If you take a look at the people that we're training to send out into industry as graduates, one of the issues you face as organizations is you need this interdisciplinary outlook, this willingness to work with a wide variety of people effectively. But most of our students will come out of what we call a single honours degree. They will specialise in one area, not multiple areas. Often, because of a lack of feedback from industry, the degrees that we teach, they lack that context of, well, who are you going to be working with outside your area? So if I teach a programmer, which industries are they likely to interact with? What will they need to understand in order to work effectively? And I think that's where industry comes in. I think that's possibly where SEEDS starts to come in. Okay, I think that's enough from me at this point. Thank you.
I think these are just some thought-provoking discussions already there, Tara. I can see us going into some really critical thinking analysis. And I think, Dr. Russell, you've really explored that global capability of SEEDS and that example you've provided through Indonesia and actually to some of our guests here on the call. I understand we've got Canada, Australia, the Netherlands. It's quite a global audience. So hopefully you're getting a very good sense that this is a global program that we are very much looking forward to partnering and working with you. And hopefully we'll share some details with you at the end of this call. Dr. Kano, if I may just explore this topic a little bit further of interdisciplinary research and activities, and specifically examples of where the academic world and indeed perhaps yourself have come across this, because I think it's quite good to give the audience a sense of what's involved in those interrelationships and collaborations and activities that are almost going to be taking place within SEEDS.
I guess you meant Radu, not Kano.
Yes, apologies.
yeah, no worries. So let me actually preface this with stating that, first of all, thank you for invitation, and it is really pleasurable to see such a wide area of expertise here, because as you're saying, the crosses between boundaries, between disciplines is very important, and communicating, as Russell just mentioned before, communicating between disciplines is a big challenge. I personally also try to run interdisciplinary research where, as a chemist, right, I try to develop these chemical methodologies, but with a very real-life application. And if I want to apply my sensors, for example, in the field for benefit of farmers, the disciplines that we need to interact or cross is not only the technical parts like chemistry or then engineering in order to create a device that is actually a fit for purpose, but also how to transfer the knowledge between academia and, say, stakeholders like farmers, because we need to teach them how to use the instrument and how the instrument works. And then also they have to teach us how what are their problems, actually what the problems they need to be solved. So this communication between different fields and different stakeholders becomes actually quite a big challenge. And I think the experts here are providing an excellent basis for this kind of crossing to make it much easier as we'll be able to talk amongst ourselves and then also with the stakeholders that you guys are providing. So I think this would be a very, very interesting way of making or developing solutions much more efficiently, if I may say that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And maybe just to also highlight, Dr. Radu, what you've shared there in terms of just the links between sort of chemistry and the transferring of those knowledge and skills, but also for the benefits of those on the call. We have quite a few other institutions that are part of SEEDS. And so whilst you see quite a few experts here on the panel, We do have a few other experts that will be exploring several other areas. I think, Tara, we probably will progress to Q&As. I'm not sure if there are any Q&As.
Just before we touch on Q&A and building on what we talked about partnership and what have you, I just wondered whether or not we could get Sebastian's views on scaling here, because lots of academic things fail, or maybe that's a little harsh, don't become the thing that we want them to become because we find it difficult to scale them and make them part of the wider world. What's your thoughts on that?
Thank you, Tara. I think this is really, really fundamental. And I really like the way you build up your questions towards a crescendo, is that first work together, what for, how, but ultimately the question is that, is it feasible? And the key is that what we're talking about here, what we call knowledge transfer. And this is really fundamental, because the government put money into academia and that money is there for the consumer, for the taxpayer, to make sure that there needs to be a social impact. Hence the need for academic not to develop just the little tool in the lab and be happy with it, make sure there's a use for that. Now, this is really fundamental from the start, because it also implies that the academic needs to understand where the issues, the problems that companies face, so that they can help them to develop that. And this is really important because ultimately, the one that made a decision is the consumer. So we need to have some awareness of what company wants, so that they can have the economy turning around. The consumer is king. But altogether, right, the point is that we can come up with some ideas which seems fantastic. So we've got a proof of concept. It seems that it would fit really well into a company. But beyond that is that the innovation is great, the technique is great, but is it actually feasible and applicable? And in that, I've got a couple of examples that I can cite, which are quite interesting. One of the work we do in my group in bioremediation is to recycle precious metal from electronic waste using microorganisms. And this is quite interesting because ultimately, when I talked to the company for N2S, who's been recycling electronic waste for 50 years, they never heard of anything about microbiology. Then from my point of view, I'm originally a biomedical scientist. There's no reason why I would work with a company that deals with electronic waste. And then into the discussion, I'm telling them, well, have you heard about bioleaching, where we can try to use microorganisms, bacteria, to pick up your metal, put them in solutions so we can reuse them. And this sounds very great. And the biomining industry has done it, and quite a few academics done it. Now, something is missing there is that we can get a metal, we get them in solution, that's a proof of concept. But then for the company to exploit that, we need to scale it up and to make sure that then we need to pick up the metal into a way that will be usable for their own customers. And this comes what has been mentioned by quite a few of the speakers already. That means that first, interdisciplinary. So we need to bring engineering to make sure that once you got those metal out, you pull them out. And then you need something else. You need an understanding of who are the customers, how do they want the metal, how much they want. So we've got a proof of concept. And then talking to the company, they tell us, well, what we need is this and this and this and that. Then it comes back to us, and is it feasible or not? Can we actually scale it up? And this is where what I've called early on a knowledge transfer become a knowledge exchange. Not only industry will benefit from the knowledge from academics, but then academics benefit from the understanding of what the product and its application is, to see whether the scaling up is feasible. Then academics take part into the scaling up, then a company feedback on the scaling up. So this knowledge transfer, that sounds to me like we transfer the knowledge, end of it, next one, is not correct. This knowledge exchange will remain. And this is where somehow, for a long time, we had an idea that academics do a lot of lovely stuff, a lot of innovation, and companies a different world. It is time where, exactly like CIS proposed, to work together from the start and then continuing with it. It's not going to stop within a couple of years. So what happened with the company I was mentioning, we started embedding some notion of microbiology into the company. The proof of concept work, we create small labs, and then the next stage they come back to us and look, this is really successful. Now we need to get much bigger. And the next stage, which is very successful now, is that building the understanding for us, academic, to understand what are the needs for the company to get at a really, really high scaling up is really, really important. And this works. We've also done that in another domain in biomedical sciences, working with a company in life sciences called LSG, where they wanted to develop a medium for cell culture which they also wanted to use ultimately for transporting cell and tissue and so on. So we need to go back. We've developed that medium. We embed this in a company which had barely any knowledge about cell culture and so on. And this moved on so well that from an SME, that company becomes suddenly having bigger product to apply. Now, to the company itself, the scaling up become their own understanding of from an SME becoming a global company. So this understanding of scaling up is on both sides. Suddenly, the company now have been really successful with the product, become a bigger company, and then come back to us, and that product now needs to fit into their application. So then again, this idea of the stages are, we start with the knowledge on one side, the application, the issue and application on the other side. We work together towards a proof of concept, embedding it in the company, and then the scaling up has to take place, which implies that if you don't want to lose any money on investment and all the rest, this idea of scaling up needs to be considered right from the start, because there's no point having a fantastic idea, a great proof of concept, something really fancy, really nice, starting a company which were already invested in it, if at some stage the scaling up is not feasible. So it is something really, really fundamental, which tend to be forgotten right at the beginning, especially from academics. We really enjoy, my job is a hobby. I'm in my lab, a lot of my colleagues come with fantastic ideas. The first question, has it got an application? Is it answering an issue? And then is it scaling up? And this is really, really a big problem.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll keep that in the front of our minds as we move into seeds to make sure that we think from the start what the end position might be, which is very difficult. You're right. Thank you. Okay, so shall we have a look at the questions? Everybody on the call, and there's lots, hundreds and hundreds of you. Now's the time to type in your questions in the panel on the Q&A, and we'll get to as many as we can. And I'm pretty sure we won't get to them all, but I'm sure we'll have follow-up sessions. So please share your thoughts and questions, and let's have a look at the first couple. So, Dr. Locke, what's some of the challenges faced by institutions today where you think research may be able to play a role?
So I think we have a number of challenges. If we look at my side of the equation here in academia, one of the key challenges we face is getting access to the right stakeholders to actually approach problems. We know that a given issue exists, but in order to actually address it, we need to convince end users, for example, and other industrial organizations to work together with us to form a solution. And I think we've alluded to some of the problems, a few speakers have mentioned some of the problems we have in academia with this. We have been known on occasion to produce outputs that haven't been directly translatable into a real world solution that can just be used in a turnkey way. And I think seeds actually has an important role to play here, because you can help reassure the industrial side that we can actually provide a turnkey solution, and you can help refine what we're doing in our academic research into a solution that can actually be used. If you look at the challenges industry faces in this respect, it's partly down to the recruitment of appropriate individuals. The demand for data scientists, artificial intelligence experts has gone through the roof in the last few years. Even the demand for general software engineers, it's very difficult for academia to actually meet demand there. And we're actually having at Loughborough the best years we've ever had in computer science in terms of the student numbers we're seeing coming through, the people who are interested in this area, but we still can't meet demand from industry. Now, if we focus in on the research side of that, I think one of the areas that industry has a role to play, which perhaps it hasn't up till this point leveraged properly, is support for PhD students. Now, PhD students allow you to, at the end of that period of study, hire an employee who understands your industry, who has worked in a focused research way on real world problems that you've set as an industry. I think those individuals are far more valuable as research scientists than trying to take our undergraduate students and train them in-house. Now, if we look at the number of industry-funded PhD students out there, it's remarkably few, but the opportunities abound. A 3-year piece of study working with university and an industry partner can be very valuable in terms of what output it can produce. So I think that's one that that needs to be looked at a bit more closely, perhaps by seeds in the future. Thank you.
And just building on that, actually, there's a couple of questions related and around thinking about not only, I think you're right on the PhDs front, but is there a possibility for an MSc program around the interdisciplinary idea to try and get maybe some of our young people more ready by giving them that kind of linkage in an MSc?
There are, and I think one of the issues we've got in the United Kingdom, if you look at the composition of our MSc cohorts, remarkably few home students in many areas, and it's because the students have the impression that industry doesn't value an MSc qualification over a Bachelor of Science qualification. Right. So I think it's partly an industry issue there as well. You need to say, well, if you've got an MSc, we'll fast track you, we'll pay you more. There has to be a tangible benefit there for a student to risk undertaking an additional year of study with that additional year of financial obligation. And in the past, industry has actually directly helped fund or part fund MSc programs. I've seen that done, and it can be very successful, but there has to be a belief there that the value of the MSc adds to the employee's worth. And I think in order to do that, industry's got to work with academia to make sure they're being trained on the right areas, the right approaches, the right techniques to be useful as employees going forwards when they graduate.
And certainly speaking as industry, I mean, we sit here with like 700 or 800 vacancies and find it really difficult to find people to fill them. So, you know, really being more creative about how we get people ready to take them in makes a lot of sense to me. You know, certainly the whole idea of an extra year and fast tracking and stuff, certainly something we'll explore. Okay.
I could add something to that question, because this is a very, very important issue, and it's still about, I'm not sure, it's true, industry has a bit of a lack of understanding often of what's happening in academia, and the other way around too. And I think it has to start somewhere. And I think what we're doing at Coventry, we're creating a scheme where we've got match funded PhDs, so that if you approach industry and tell them, get a PhD student. For industry, it's a bit of a tricky one, because over a PhD, often the first year, it takes time for the student to get in, and so the result will take a time before they get in. So a lot of companies feel they can afford it. On the other hand, if you got a scheme which is particularly designed towards a PhD student working in industry, so maybe even a different model to the one which is purely academic, where the student takes his time and so forth and so on, still remaining student-led, we've got a scheme which is much more feasible and less scary for industry. Also, the funding is matched, so half and half, like we do. So if I find a partner who's interested, we start a discussion. We then decide to, each of us, Coventry pay half the funding, the industry pay the other half of the funding, and altogether the management of the student going to be on both sides. There would be an industry supervisor, as much of a director of study which remain at university, but the whole management become much, much less scary to industry. I've talked to many companies for whom academic is still, well, academic, you know, they're stuck in the office, they don't really know what we're doing, they enjoy work on a lab, we need something here and now. Industry tend to want things done yesterday. So somehow you can see we're on both sides. Even academic feel like, I don't want to work with industry, they haven't got a clue, we want to do fundamental research. So really to understand the issue on both sides, we need to have a discussion with a scheme which is built for that knowledge transfer. And this is something really, really important. It's exactly the case. In academic, want a lot of PhD students working for them and do a lot of work. Industry want those guys as a cheap pair of very clever guys, and that's not going to work. It has to be really a scheme which is designed for that kind of application. And we've been working for quite a while on that at Coventry, but you're right. It's not as successful as I would have expected. I would think hundreds of them would be there, and now it's not. It needs a lot of management and understanding from both sides of what it's about. And I think a platform like Seeds, the way I look at it, it's a platform. This is ideal, where you got all the stakeholders understanding what the issue are and how we can actually manage that. I think that's ideal.
I totally agree. It definitely feels like something where we could get some quick wins as well, interestingly, because say we industry very much has a need, and you know it'd be great if we could use that need to actually the Seeds program could help provide some of those people, but also start solving some of these problems. There's a general question here, but I'm going to ask Professor Anjem, what are you looking forward to the most in Seeds? Why are you in it? What are you looking forward to?
Yeah, so if one word could explain my kind of priority is that impact. So the impact actually that we would generate by working with end users, with industrial partners and the academics involved would be enormous. And especially the new funding landscape in UK and elsewhere is very impact oriented and impact driven. So they want to see that the work we do has real world applications. There are communities who are benefiting it from, and then whatever we do is sustainable. It's not that we have an ambitious idea or ambitious project, an ambitious product, but if no one is using it, it's not sustainable. It does not have an end user. There is no community to sustain or kind of exploit it. Then it means that even fantastic research would be wasted. A lot of good ideas would not be kind of sustainable. So yeah, so in the long run, so impact is the number one thing that we are looking for on this activity actually. So impact on industry, impact on society, impact on academia, and then beyond actually. So that's my number one kind of interest in this whole project. And especially with sustainability, climate change, and wider impact. I mean, it looks like the impact is embedded within the program itself actually.
Excellent, thank you. And maybe asking the same question in a way to Matti from our point of view in industry, why is seeds important to you and widely to CGI?
Thank you for that question. So I think seeds is important to CGI on many fronts, and one of those we've touched on. On the social front, being able to work and partner with the academia and academics and students, PhD students, giving them the opportunity to work with an organization such as CGI to apply some of their knowledge from the academic, from their universities. So from a social perspective, we do a lot of work with graduates and universities in terms of providing them with the opportunities to move into practical sort of roles and experiences. From an environmental perspective, we have a very ambitious target, Tara, of 2026.
We do.
Achieving zero by 2026 for our UK operations. That's going to require us to think laterally and innovatively about how we can achieve that net zero, aligning that to our scope 3 target around the supply chain, which Professor Anjam also spoke about. So we definitely need creative, innovative thinking in order to achieve our very ambitious net zero target of 2026. But the third one is something you touched on, Tara, in terms of being that glue. We deliver a lot of solutions to several clients, whether that is from the utilities perspective, space and defense, government, and wider. And so being able to transfer the knowledge from seeds practically into industry is an area that I think is going to be incredibly important for CGI and for us to demonstrate and do. And then the final one is we heard from the UNFCCC at a global scale being able to contribute to the thinking, whether that is from an IPCC perspective, the Conference of the Parties, but also being able to address some of the critical challenges around mitigation and adaptation from a climate change perspective, but also from a nature perspective, whether that is natural capital accounting and so forth. So as we are a global organization, I think these are areas that will be very, very easy for CGI to reach in partnership with academics.
And just picking up on that global point, Professor Fano, from your point of view, is this a UK thing, or would you like to see this be a bit more global?
There's no doubt it has to be global. It's something where each country has to benefit from the expense of the other country. Also, the fact that the impact will not be the same in all the countries. We really need to share that knowledge, culture, everything has to change. In fact, the magic word for impact, the second magic word after impact, is culture. What we want to do here is not just to change the market, is to change your culture. Instead of looking at, I've got companies coming to me and telling me, look, we want to bring sustainability, so can you help us to recycle our plastic? And this is great, but that's the end product. I think the understanding of sustainability come with it at the beginning. in a strategy of building that company and industry towards sustainability. This is a cultural change, and this has to be global. This cannot be just purely in a single country. That's
very, very true. And there's quite a few questions actually, all gathered around the fact that whilst it's a fantastic program, should we think about focusing on younger people sooner? So should we be trying to push some of this seeds thinking down the line into primary and secondary schools to try and encourage the students of the future to be ready to help us? And anybody got any views on that?
I can have a go, Tara. So sure, yes, I think that is very much the ambition for Seeds, is that it should be a platform and a forum for not just businesses, not just for governments, but for individuals, for the educational sector as well. And actually, this gives us a really good opportunity to say that if you're in the academic world, would like to be part of Seeds, please reach out to us and join us, because we will be scoping out and shaping that vision for Seeds as we progress throughout the year and as we progress with several projects. I think a few of us already have some calls planned over the next few weeks, months, to try and identify that order of priority of projects that we're going to address. But definitely, Tara, the sort of primary, tertiary education sector is a key area that we'll be exploring through Seeds as well.
Can I add something to your question, Tara? Is that there's no doubt this has to start as soon as possible. But there's going to be a time before these children reach the time where they're going to be working, managing, and do all the rest. And in the meantime, raising the awareness with the consumer, which starts with the children, because they would have an input on their parents and so on. But today, and for the next 5, 10 years, and 20 years, the consumers is everybody. And the consumers will dictate which product they want to buy, so will dictate to industry what to build, which will run the economy. And somehow, even if you start imposing strong policy on companies, it has to be feasible. It's linked with the feasibility we talked about early on. So I think this awareness starts with the children, you're right, but it has to touch everybody. The consumer is the one that will dictate all that. I know we had long discussion with Matty about the consumers and awareness and all that. I think you're completely right. And this platform is fantastic because we've got most of the stakeholders, but you're right, we need to have the other one, the consumer, the one who will accept or not a new product. And this is really, really important.
Excellent. There's a lot of support for the micro data center idea in the Q&A coming through. That's a big hit with the people who are typing questions. There's a broader question about what are the current technology needs, physical or intellectual, in which we can support you? And that's coming from one of the CGI folk. So I don't know if anybody on the call has anything right now that you would want to express as a gap that you need help with.
Oh, I think I can probably touch for days. Did Dr. Radu, did you want to come in, or are you happy for me to?
Go ahead. Go ahead. I can probably maybe just add a few words after, if necessary.
I'll be very quick and very brief. I think the technologies that we will need and explore are going to be quite broad, from everything to do with space and defense and satellite, to everything to do with blockchain, digital twins, AI, machine learning, supervised and unsupervised, robotics. There's pretty much going to be all sorts of technologies that we will need. So please do reach out to us if you've got expertise in any specific area. We would love to partner and work with you. Dr. Radu, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
I actually just wanted to take it from a different angle. What I think CGI and this platform can do, and the industries that are connected here, are providing problems which then we can come up with creative solutions with. You know, Sebastian earlier mentioned a very creative solution of using microbes for metal sequestration, if I'm not mistaken, right? It's very creative, right? And this kind of solution would not be possible if there was no communication between the industry, a very open communication and selling, this is the problem, and then Sebastian coming up with a creative solution. So if we, through this platform, we as in academic side get in contact or learn about the problems, I'm sure that we have creative solutions for those sitting somewhere in a drawer, whether in this drawer or the actual physical drawer. So having a platform like Seeds, in my opinion, is a phenomenal way to communicate and identify the problems for which very interesting solutions can be developed.
Excellent. I think Professor Anjum, you're just going to add to that?
Yeah, so I think Seeds could be kind of provide an ecosystem where the people who owns the data and the people who has the applications, they could come together. For example, at Leicester Space Park, we have kind of tens of terabytes of data that's coming from different satellites, and there. I mean, on the other hand, there are a lot of students within. I mean, universities or schools or elsewhere, if they want to wants to work with us or want to make use of that data for sustainability initiatives, for example, to help in climate change goals or crop modeling or droughts and floods or supply chain. So we are happy to work with them, and this is exactly the kind of an environment we are looking forward to provide actually. So if Seeds could basically become a kind of a platform where it could bring in the two communities, that one community has the data, other has needs and applications, and we could basically provide them support and platform to basically enable them to meet their needs actually.
Excellent, thank you. I think unfortunately we've come to the end of our call, but the beginning of Seeds. So if you didn't get your question answered, and I'm apologising because I can see over 100 questions scrolling past me, did you want to take the opportunity to get in touch with us at seeds@cgi.com, and we can field your questions to the relevant professors just so that we get back to you. So that would be super if you did that. We will be back, though, with more podcasts and updates as we go through. Lots and lots of you are very enthusiastic about getting involved, so we will find a way of keeping you all up to date and as actively involved as we can. Let me take the opportunity to thank all our fabulous speakers. Amazing. Thank you. You've made me feel very stupid. So for that, thank you very much for starting my day. Yeah, amazing. Really looking forward to working with you all. And Matty, thank you for helping us organise the call. And welcome to Seeds, everybody. I think it's going to be a very exciting few years. Thank you. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.